that. So we're now recording the webinar. People are still joining, but in the interest of time and punctuality, we'll get going. So to introduce myself, my name's John Slow. I'm a director here at Delta Energy Environment, and on the line we have Susan Fennell. I'll start by saying just a word about Delta for those of you that don't know us, so you know the context from where we're coming from. So on this slide here, you can see what I'd call the old energy system and the new energy system on the right. You can argue and debate whether we're still in the old world or we're already in the new world, or at what point we are in this transition. But Delta's mission is to help the energy sector make this transition from the old world to the new world. And we have a number of different advisory services and consultancy activity to help companies do this, one of which is customer data analytics, under which we have carried out this work on electrical demand disaggregation. So the agenda for today will be 40 minutes, as I said, and you can see here we'll start with a very brief introduction before sharing some of the meat of our key findings on the topic. Then we'll look at accuracy, some of the players and where we see the opportunities going, before finishing with placing this in context of our customer data analytics research. And we'll try and make sure we have 5 minutes or so at the end for questions. So you can see who is talking today. As I mentioned, my name's John Slow. We have Susan Fennell on the line. Susan, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. I'm looking forward to talking to you about demand disaggregation and hearing your questions, so please do chip in when you've got some.
And you can see other members of our team at the bottom of this slide. So, the last introduction slide, you can see here a little graphic to show you how to ask questions using the dashboard on your right-hand side. And just to remind you, we are recording this webinar. We can send you the link so you can share the webinar with colleagues. And if you ask us, then we're happy to send you the slides as well. Okay, demand disaggregation. It's always good to make sure we're on the same page before we get into the topic. So, Sue, do you want to just explain our take on demand disaggregation to make sure we're all aligned?
Yes, sure. And I think the first thing is to say this is electricity demand disaggregation we're talking about, and we've also been talking about it in the residential market. Alternatives like gas disaggregation and heat disaggregation do exist, but that's not what we've been looking at. So it's electricity, and it's about how you sample the electricity in a single point in the house, but can then infer insight about different appliances around the house based on that one sampling point. And then as a result of being able to identify and monitor appliances around the house, what kind of applications and use cases can you build around that insight?
Thanks, Sue. And would you say in the research that you come across people interpreting demand disaggregation differently, or would you say everyone really has a common understanding of what those words refer to?
Yes, there's occasional disagreement as to whether smart plugs are in or out, because in a way they're on the continuum. So you can plug, as you all know, you can plug lamps or washing machines or hair dryers or anything else into a smart plug or a smart wall socket and detect with 100% accuracy what's plugged into that. And you can use that also to then do analytics to see what cycle, for example, the washing machine is on, and so that is on a continuum, and it's arguable as to whether it's. I mean, we're saying it's out of scope, but it's a sort of substitute, or if you can do data analytics on these smart plugs, eventually demand disaggregation will probably be able to do a lot of the same analytics.
Thanks, Sue. So having made sure we're all aligned, we're going to ask you a question now. So we've got about 50 people, just under 50 people on the webinar at the moment. And we're going to ask your opinion through an online poll, which we'll just launch. And the question which you should see now, is around whether you believe demand disaggregation is ready for market or not. So technically ready with a business case that works. So all you have to do is select one of the answers and submit. It's completely anonymous. We can't tell who voted for what. And if the answer that you would like to give isn't there, then either don't answer or give the one that best matches your current opinion. We've got now 2/3 of people have voted. So we'll just give a little bit more time for those that haven't voted to vote. We'd encourage you, even if you're not sure, to pick the one that best matches your opinion at the moment. We're up at 85% of people, 87%, so last few seconds to get your votes in. Okay, and now if we push the button, we should be able to publish the results and show you what you voted for. So here you can see. And quite an interesting conclusion. Nearly 40% thinking significantly further development is required. Only 5% think it's ready, so that's very few people think it's ready with a business case that works. And a chunk's thinking it's almost there. So it's not representative. We have a cross-section of people, but an interesting indication for how the energy sector are thinking about demand disaggregation. Okay, so we have, I guess, some people that aren't yet convinced that demand disaggregation is ready to go. And this is really how we approach the topic as well. I'm not saying this is our conclusion, but we like to be skeptical at Delta. We like to convince ourselves about things. Sue, the two things that we were skeptical about at the beginning, do you want to say a few words about this?
Yes, accuracy, which is related to expense, is clearly an issue. So there are some devices which you could put in that can do very high frequency sampling and are incredibly accurate. But today they cost, most of them cost hundreds of pounds, if not even more. So clearly for most of the use cases the utility industry has been looking at, that's prohibitive. And there's been a cloud in many discussions within utilities over what you can do with accuracy that is far, far below 99%, in some cases 70, 80, 90%, when you try to do demand disaggregation based on smart meter alone, or CADs associated with the smart meter. And so getting enough accuracy at a reasonable cost seemed to be a major barrier. And the second question is time to kitchen drawer. Once customers have seen that their kettle is drives a certain type of usage pattern and what it costs them per year, and they've seen what the fridge costs, won't they just lose interest? So these are the two criticisms that we had and that I've often heard levelled at demand disaggregation.
Thanks very much, Sue. We've had one comment already, which is great. So whether we should be talking about recognizing appliances or recognizing usages, and I think that's a good subtle comment, actually, that it's what the electricity is being used for, in a way, is as important as the appliance using it. So let's move on. So we'll start with our key findings, which focused on where we see commercial value or value for customers, where we see business opportunities. Sue, do you want to run through these?
Sure. So the first that I'm sure everybody on the call is completely familiar with is energy customer engagement. And that is, the intent is to develop a relationship with the consumer around their energy data, to be able to provide them insight into how to reduce their consumption, perhaps insight into how they could reduce the operating cost of their machines as well. For example, if they use their washing machine 3 times more than average homes, maybe they could put more washing in the washing machine or whatever. So insights and tips around customer engagement, and the benefits of that are, first of all, the utility would get a better relationship where they have none. Secondly, there's a sort of feedback loop that happens where if you can provide valuable insight to a customer based on what data you do have, then you can make an argument to them as to why they should part with a little bit more data. For example, if you then need to know that they're a two-bedroom flat rather than a three-bedroom house, or that they have a family, there's 4 people in the house, and that would radically change the type of insight that you would be able to give. They might be much more willing to provide 1 or 2 more bits of data if they think the insight will then be richer. So you get this virtuous loop where you can then get more data and insight out of the customer. And all that data you get is, of course, then valuable in your customer database for all these other predictive models that exist, like churn predictive models and debt predictive models and all the other things. The more data you have, the richer those models are. So the other thing is that if you build a customer relationship, probably Net Promoter Score goes up and churn goes down. So these are the kinds of benefits that utilities have been seeking with energy customer engagement.
So Sue, it's almost a twin win there. The customer has better insight, and the energy retailer gets better engagement with the customer, which can then be a platform to do a whole lot more with that customer.
Exactly. It's win-win, and the question is, can you do it at a low enough cost? That's really the. I don't think everybody would grab that and say it's a no-brainer to do it. The problem is cost. I mean, if you think that EBIT on a energy consumer can be kind of 10 to 20 pounds a year in total, then when you start to look at what you might have to spend for these solutions, it's a good chunk of that today.
Sure.
And that's where the issue lies.
And the other question, which we'll come on to a bit, is whether it does really engage customers and whether it does really increase Net Promoter Score and result in more engaged customers for the retailer. But let's move on to Crosssell, number 2.
All right. So Crosssell, there's 2 ways of being able to promote new products through this engagement interface that you would have created. The first is that you, through this virtuous loop, as well as through the monitoring of the appliances, you'll have much more data and insight about your customers, so you just know more about them. So when you start to build propensity models to buy energy audits or renewables or whatever else, your propensity model should just be more accurate. And then the second thing is that because you are engaging the customer on some kind of online or app-based product, and you've got them coming to this thing, you now have a new channel, sticky channel, where they perceive you as helping them as opposed to their hated utility that rips them off. So you've now got an engaged new channel where you can promote things. And if you're clever about it, you don't need to promote it as a you should buy this, but a piece of advice. You could save this amount on your energy bill if you considered X. And there's always a thin line between advice and cross-sell, and you can play where you want on that line and still achieve cross-sell. And then the types of things.
Sorry, carry on.
Go on, John.
So given many energy retailers have got a strategy to move beyond commodity and generate revenue from services, this could be, and again it comes down to cost, but this could be a very powerful way to do that. Yes, and some of the things that you could or people are trying to cross-sell directly off it are energy audits, and in the States, one of the things you can see with quite crude data is that the air conditioning filter it needs to be replaced, so that's an easy win. You might be able to push them onto a new tariff. Whilst there are some things that you can cross-sell purely off this data, I think it's probably fair to say that this could also be just an element that feeds a much more cohesive cross-sell strategy and cross-sell prediction engines. So there's opportunity not to try to make this the cross-sell strategy, but to make it an input into a wider cross-sell strategy. Okay. If we look at assisted living, then this is, I was going to say more tangible, but is that the right way to describe it, Sue?
Yes, I think so. And I think what's exciting about the assisted living is that I think there are some low-hanging fruit use cases that people might actually pay for. So there's general consensus in the energy that if you go with a mass market solution, the mass market's not probably willing to pay much for, if anything, probably nothing, for the energy-based engagement. But assisted living is different. So at its very least, you can see if there's been any activity in the day, or depending on how granularly you're sampling the data, in the last hour or even in the last minute. So you could see if somebody has got up and put the lights on, if they've gone to the bathroom, you can see whether they use the kettle in the morning, and you could do all of that from a single place. Now I actually put one in my elderly mother's home, and what's very interesting is that, because most of you know I do a lot of work in connected home, so it won't be any surprise. I try to put in a video camera into my mum's house. I try to put in a connected smart plug to monitor the kettle. I try to put in a whole load of different things, and you wouldn't have them.
To interrupt you a second, we've got a bit of crackling on the line. Could you just check where your microphone is, maybe?
Okay, is that any better?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Great. So so she felt that many of these products made her feel like she was under surveillance. And when I suggested putting in this smart energy device that just monitored in one place, she thought that was quite a cool idea. So from that, I can see her movements around the flat. If she doesn't pick up the phone, I can see if she's okay, just purely based on the energy activity. It's an extraordinary amount you can see from that. And a number of people are now starting to target that, which is interesting. One of the suppliers has got their disaggregation product in 3 care homes, and 1 or 2 other companies are looking at it. And I think probably to be successful, it needs to be part of a roadmap of wider services. So if you get somebody on the bottom of the escalator with the kind of product I was talking about, you might end up with a wider range of things. You can then cross-sell them, all the way up to having a pendant around their neck with emergency call-out. Mm-hmm. But I think this is one of the really interesting low-hanging fruit use cases, the entry-level one, and I do think people might pay for that.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And the 4th one, I guess people have read the description. It may sound a bit exotic, but there is a company that we talk to quite closely, Bundles in the Netherlands, that is offering a pay-by-cycle washing service. So the customer doesn't pay for the washing machine. The company Bundles will deliver the washing machine to the customer and charge by wash. So it's tapping into the pay product as a service business models that we see emerging more and more. And actually there's a data analytics firm, Onzo, I think, provides the analytics for Bundles. Sue, any other comments on product as a service and how demand disaggregation taps or enables this or supports it?
Yes, so what's going on with the Bundles service is that there's a smart plug on the washing machine, and Onzo is the supplier behind that, and they're doing analytics, and they're able to see what cycle the washing machine is on at any time, and that's how they're able to bill by the cycle. They're also potentially able to see when it's likely that a pack of washing powder would have run out, so that they can soon sell washing powder and other things. Whilst the electricity is currently being monitored by a smart plug, in due course, when there are more smart meters in the Netherlands, there's no reason why it couldn't, the disaggregation couldn't come from a single point in the home. So this could move to what we properly call demand disaggregation.
Okay, thanks, Sue. We'll keep going.
Can you hear me?
We can. You cut out for a second there, Sue.
Okay.
So just double check your mic position. But let's move on.
I've just unplugged the microphone. Is that any better?
Yes, that's better. Okay. Moving on to the next slide, we talked about accuracy. Sue, that's a really interesting topic, I think. The more we thought about this, the more we talked to people, the more we synthesized the research we were doing. I think our views on accuracy probably changed a bit.
Yes, absolutely. I started out by asking all the suppliers what their accuracy was, both to detect appliances and to measure the electricity through them. And I realized a couple of things. Firstly, the accuracy depends very much on what the appliance is and how many appliances are on at the same time. But much more importantly, most of the suppliers said, well, you know, our accuracy is getting better and better, but we're not even aiming for 99%. We're quite happy with where we are. We have, you know, we have things in place that will get ever more accurate, but Nirvana is not really 99% accuracy. We've got enough. What's really important is to present the insight that is relevant to a customer and the consequences rather than the truth. So, for example, you don't need to tell somebody that their kettle costs them £17.23. It's enough to tell them that the range is between, say, 12 and 16 pounds, and you know that might give you a plus or minus 25% variance, which may be the accuracy of your data. So you can be clever with the way that you message the customer in order to make the most of the data accuracy you do have. Somebody else interestingly told me that they found that they shouldn't tell the customer every week how many times they used the washing machine, or rather show them the times, because somebody could actually remember that they didn't use the washing machine at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, in which case you look stupid. But if you're broadly accurate and then at the end of the month you say, well, you used the washing machine 10 times this month, then whether or not they used it 10 times or 9 times, they're not worried about and they can't remember. And so you're still giving them useful insight in telling them roughly how many times and how that compares with other homes and what it costs them over the 10 cycles, but without exposing the limits of your accuracy. The other thing is that you can actually supplement the accuracy of the signal detection algorithm, the pure maths going on with the electricity detection. But there's a range of soft techniques that you can use, which we'll come on to in a minute.
Thanks, Sue. We've got a question, and we'll jump to the question now, so I think it brings up an interesting point. Can you really advise a user to change their appliance based on an estimation of what their appliance is using? So, for example, to change their fridge based on that estimation of what the fridge is using and how the fridge is working. Now, Sue, you can give your view on that, but one example, well, one way to answer that question, if you out of the blue told a customer your fridge is inefficient, I think you should change it, then I think that would be tough to do. So you have to really develop the right to have that conversation with a customer, and that right can be developed through a spectrum of interactions with a customer based on how they're using energy. And an interesting example, E.ON has partnered with a company called Energy, and if you Google E.ON and Energy, you'll see a new marketplace in the UK where you can buy your fridge from that marketplace. It's interesting in that it looks at the energy score. They developed a new category to categorize appliances. And you could link the conversation between E.ON, for example, and the customer around insight on how they're using energy and how their fridge is performing, build that up over time, and then link that to the marketplace that they've established with NAV. Sue, any observations from your side on the question as to whether you could really advise an end user to change their fridge based on the disaggregation service?
Yes, I think there are several things. First of all, let's be clear that when you think you've detected a fridge, you actually don't know at that point whether you've detected a ginormous American fridge that is very efficient but energy hungry because it's 4 times the size of most people's fridge, or whether you've detected a small fridge that's 30-year-old and incredibly inefficient. So without some additional input from the customer, you have no idea whether what you've got is an inefficient fridge or not. But there are ways of getting the customer to provide a little bit of extra information, so then at least you do know that. And then I think the second thing is, I was saying before that there is a range of techniques from advice to selling. So you might just observe that the fridge costs £80 a year, whereas most people's fridge of that type, once you know what size fridge they've got, maybe costs 40. So the first thing is just giving them some interesting insight, and maybe you don't try to upsell them or move them on that particular thing. So over time, some of the behavioral techniques that some of the better suppliers have will be able to nudge customers, and there's a real art to how you do this and how you do it over time, so that you don't piss them off and just go bang, right, you need a new fridge, click here, and it appears as a useful advice service. Perhaps they could click to see some fridges, perhaps they don't buy then, maybe they buy in a year's time. And I think the art is to not be pushy with it and to appear to be helpful.
Thanks.
And to do in a scientifically behavioral way.
So keeping it on time, and sorry to get distracted by the question, but I thought it was an interesting question. Let's move on now to ways in which you can drive engagement and accuracy.
Yes, brilliant. So I've actually talked about the second one a bit, so I'm going to spend more time on the first, these soft techniques to improve accuracy. The first thing is user input. Now, a number of suppliers are already using this, and the techniques vary widely, and it's something to look out for as you're assessing different systems. So some people will ask the customer a bunch of questions before they even start using the service, like, I don't know how many rooms are in the house, or how big is it, or how many people are in it, or to list the appliances that the customer has. Some don't do that, but as they identify appliances, the system might recognize appliance 14, and every time appliance 14 comes on, it knows it's the same appliance, but it's not yet 100% sure what that appliance is, and it might ask the user to label it, and it might not just ask them to say, is it a fridge, but it might even invite them to add the manufacturer and model number. And other systems go in between that, and they make a stab at what they think all the appliances are, but then if they're not sure, only then do they ask the user. So there's a whole range of techniques to get users to help, or simply to correct in some cases. So there's an option with some of the suppliers for the user to just say, no, that's not the fridge, it's actually, I don't know, the freezer, or it's something else.
So I think what we've seen is some suppliers are, there's a number of aspects to what some of the demand disaggregation companies offer. There's having algorithms, best-in-class algorithms to detect the appliances, but the customer engagement and how you use these soft techniques is also a really important feature of a demand disaggregation offering.
Yes, and I would go so far. I mean, I went, for example, to a NILM conference, which is non-intrusive load monitoring, which is these demand disaggregation devices, and the entire conference was talking about various aspects of the mathematical complexity and challenges and benefits of different algorithms. So at that conference, most of the focus was on the signal detection mass algorithm, but I would say that at least half of a successful service in the market is down to these hexagons that are about the additional soft techniques. That's what's going to separate great services and great suppliers from simple mathematical algorithms. It's not just about the mass algorithm. And then, go on, John.
Just keeping an eye on time, Sue. Should we move on to the next slide, or is there a last point on this slide?
Well, just self-learning is another thing. So if you are able to use your behavioral science to persuade users to help you, as I was discussing, then the system can start to self-learn. So it'll then get better and better because you're giving it user feedback. Part of getting users to participate requires you to make it fun and make it easy. And again, it's difficult to make an application do that well. And some suppliers are better at it than others.
Okay. So accuracy we've looked at, and if we move on now to some of the range of suppliers, I guess, Sue, this is almost summarizing what we've talked about to some degree in the last few slides.
Yes, it is, absolutely. So I think the first thing to note is that there's actually a ton of suppliers. way more than the 3 that were in the market when I was leading Smart Strategy at Empower about 4 or 5 years ago, and first looked at this. And this is just a list of a few in alphabetical order. Our report has a much longer list. And then some of the things you might want to think about as you're comparing and contrasting suppliers. I think the first thing to say is it's very, very use case dependent. So if you're really focused and clear on what it is that you're hoping to get out of this, you will actually be able to eliminate 2/3 of the suppliers incredibly fast. And because of some of the complexity of the comparing and contrasting based on algorithm or accuracy or whatever, the fact that the use case will just eliminate suppliers for you is quite valuable. Some of the things to look at are the input method and the accuracy. So does the supplier require a specialized high-frequency device, or are they using just smart meters, or are they using smart meters with an additional gateway that can provide 10-second data, and what kind of analytics are they able to do on that signature? And you might go as far as to ask some questions about which appliances do they recognize with what accuracy, and what happens when multiple devices are on. There's also different categories of devices. So machines with inductive loads are harder for some algorithms than steady state machines like a toaster. And machines that have got multiple states, like a washing machine, where it's got different cycles. Again, for some types of algorithm, those are harder to detect. So so even just asking accuracy, you have to ask under the right set of circumstances, and that might be partly driven by what you're trying to do.
Thanks.
And then there's the application design.
So just keeping on time, I think we'll probably have to move on to the next slide rather than go around the whole wheel. I think the point being that we were surprised at how many suppliers we found, and we thought quite hard and looked at the different ways to make sense of the whole range of suppliers. And the framework here, I think, is one that can be used to help do that. On the bottom left, it's a typo. We're not talking about supple business models. Actually, we're talking about the business model of the suppliers, of the demand disaggregation suppliers. So moving on to the next slide here, we talked through at the beginning. You said, of course, the more granular data, the higher the accuracy. And with our view actually is that you'll start to get very granular data at much lower costs in the future.
Yes, absolutely, and I think we're going to see prices fall in two ways. First of all, those suppliers that offer device-based solution, the cost of the devices is going to come down. I talked to several suppliers who've currently got devices that would cost more than €100 today, sometimes significantly more, and their feeling is that at scale these would come down to something of the order of 30 to 50 euros, and there's one with something of that within that range already on the market today. So that is still too expensive, probably, for a pure energy engagement use case. But it starts to make some of the other use cases, like the assisted living or whatever, interesting. Perhaps for and it suggests that maybe companies should look at different approaches for different customer segments. I think the second thing is...
Sorry, carry on, Sue.
The second thing I was going to say is the actual service cost will come down. So even if you're trying to look at how can I do analysis purely on the smart meter data without any other device in the home, most of these suppliers work on some kind of license fee model where you pay a monthly license fee per user, and those costs are going to come down too as utilities try to do this at scale. And the reason it's going to come down is because you saw that long list of suppliers. Many of those are in trial at the moment, but in 18 months' time those will be launched, and so there'll simply be competitive pressure. And then the second thing is that there are some of the cloud costs will come down with scale. So there is real reason, and also I believe, but maybe the suppliers will disagree with me, that there's some margin packed in there at today's low trial volumes. and what competition that might drive that down too. And then also some of the suppliers are trying to broaden the scope of what they're offering, and as they broaden the scope of the services they can offer utilities and service providers. So again, will they be able to maybe accept slightly lower prices on the demand disaggregation because they're going after a much wider range of ways of helping a utility?
Thanks, Sue. I'm sure we'll look forward to the debate with some suppliers about that, the possible margins, but it's I think a relatively immature sector that is becoming more mature over time. So that will lead to some significant maybe shakedowns and also changes in offerings to energy suppliers. We're getting close to time now, so we try to think widely about the use cases and the value creation from demand disaggregation. Sue, just one comment, maybe 2 comments maximum on the value of the data in terms of how wide that could be in the future.
Okay, well, I'll just give you 2 examples. Tesco is already trialing one of the demand disaggregation devices because it thinks that if it can see every time a dishwasher has been put on, then it knows that it's been used 50 times. So now it's time to suggest putting a box of 50 finished tablets in the customer's trolley for Tesco online. So that's one example there. Most insurance and heating companies and things have use cases that they could benefit from. You could see that Apple or Google or Amazon would like this data to do a wide range of things with. I think the interesting thing is that can the energy companies monetize the fact other industries might like the data? And our conclusion there was that going via some sort of broker might allow a monetization model.
Thanks, Sue. So I guess to come back to our original questions, we started off quite skeptical, and we are less skeptical than we started, and we see some interesting opportunities. So you after this picture here, your view that it may have been some challenging at the beginning to develop a business case, but you can see that the stumble may be overcome now or in the next years.
I think it's just about overcome now, and I think we'll be seeing some of these solutions rolled out.
Mm-hmm. I think. Sorry, one of our key conclusions, I think, is being really clear about what you're trying to achieve. So we see lots of things that could be achieved, but
hello.
Can you hear me now, Sue? Being clear.
Yes, I can now. Sorry, okay. Say that again.
Being clear about what a company would be using demand disaggregation for. So the demand disaggregation itself isn't an end; it's a means to an end.
Yes, I would totally agree with that, that is really the important place to start. And then I think you will be able to come up with a business case. And I think if you look at the way prices are expected to fall over the next few years, I'm expecting the business case to work.
Thanks. So, lastly, just to place this in the context of our research services, the insight we've shared is from one report that's published under our customer data analytics service, which is one of our subscription-based services. And just to draw your attention to, in March, we are holding our Digital Energy Summit in Berlin, which will be one-day roundtable on customer data analytics in the energy sector, and a second day, our third Connected Homes and Energy Summit. So have a look on our website. You might already be receiving emails about that, or contact us if you'd like to know more. We, of course, would be delighted to tell you about our customer data analytics service that under which this report is published. If you're interested or curious to know more, you can look at our website for further information, and download some samples from our website, or get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to tell you more and see if it would be right for you or not. We're out of time now, so we picked up one question. There's a few more questions we haven't had a chance to respond to, but we'll follow up with those offline. And as I said at the beginning, we're always very happy to talk. Email us if you'd like a copy of the presentation. If you'd like to discuss this topic, if you've got different opinions, contrary opinions, then let us know, and we'd enjoy talking those through with you. And if you're interested in coming to Berlin, have a look at the details of the 2 days in March, and it would be great to see you there. So, Sue, any last comments you'd like to leave people with on the topic?
No, it's just it's nice to come to look at a technology and actually realize that it's got wider use cases, and that its problems can be compensated for in different ways, and I'm reasonably optimistic about it.
Great. Well, let's finish on an optimistic note. So do get in touch if you'd like a copy of the slides. We hope this has given you some new perspectives, and you've enjoyed the webinar and it's been a valuable use of your time. Thanks for attending, and we look forward to being in touch in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.